Okay, this week we are going to be talking about ecology. So first we'll look at the objectives and vocabulary. Remember, you don't have to write the vocabulary down. For the objectives, it's going to be define biotic and give examples, define abiotic, give examples. List 3 types of biodiversity and give examples, then explain how biotic and abiotic factors impact the biodiversity of a population. So let's start with just general, what is ecology? Right? Ecology is the study of organisms, the study of the interactions between organisms and the environment. Right? So we need to know where we're talking when we talk about the environment. So their habitat is where an animal lives. The word niche is more specific than habitat. So this is just not just where it lives, but also like what it eats, who eats it, like what water quality, what temperature it needs, all of that kind of stuff. So here I have a list of them. So place in food web, type of food it eats, other species that it needs, how much water it needs, when it reproduces. What I usually think of is like, when you go to the pet store and there's those, in the center of the pet store, there's like those little pamphlets on like a twirly thing, and it says like dog or golden retriever or like dwarf hamster or canary, right? And you pick it up and it has like all the information about that pet in it. That's like the niche for an animal. Make sense? The important thing about it is you need to understand that 2 species can't share a niche in the same habitat. So like if I have, I don't know, black ants that live on the ground and red ants that live on the ground, and they're both trying to live in the roots of the same tree, they can't live there. They're going to compete with each other until only one species is left. All right, so they can occupy similar niches if the black ants lived in the roots of the tree and the red ants lives on the bark of the tree. Different because it's slightly different niches, but they can't do the same niche. So next, biotic versus abiotic. So everything in the environment is either going to be biotic or abiotic. Right? Biotic would be things that are alive or have been alive. So like dead things, like a tree that fell over and is now rotting, biotic because it was once alive. Right? Abiotic is non-living things and kind of like I think of it almost like the quality of the environment. So like how windy is it? What's the temperature? How much rainfall does it get, right? How much stuff is frozen? That's going to be your abiotic stuff, right? So abiotic was never alive, will never be alive, but still affects who can live there and how they're going to live. Biotic is going to be everything living. So plants, animals, everything else. When we talk about our ecology and ecosystems, right, we talk about levels of organization, how it's organized, and that's kind of the basis and where we're going to start all of this. So first we have organism. This would be the lowest of all of our levels, right? So let me get my little pen. We're like way down here, down in this level, okay? So organism is going to be the interactions of an organism and its surroundings. So the tree and everything else around it. Then we go up to the next level and we're looking at population. So population would be a group of organisms that are of the same species and live in the same area. And remember, a species is an organism that can reproduce with each other and produce fertile offspring. So they can have babies, that can have babies. Above population, we then get to community. So these are different populations, so different species of animals that all live in the same area. So we're thinking about a forest, right? This wouldn't just be the bears. This would be like the bears and the deer and the chipmunks and the squirrels. Okay, that would be our community. The next level up is where we get to our abiotic. So before that, everything was biotic. Now at ecosystem, we're going to add in our abiotic stuff. So now we want to know about like the rivers and the wind and the temperature and all of that kind of added stuff, and the rocks and the dirt quality. Above ecosystem is biome. Biomes you did probably when you were younger, and those are a bunch of ecosystems that have the same dominant communities and climate. So like remember the tundra and the tropical rainforest and the deciduous forest. Do you remember those? You should remember those. And then lastly is biosphere, which is the whole planet because it has all the biomes all together. Next. So we're going to look at each of these getting bigger. So here I have a moose. That's our organism. Now I have a population, which is a group of moose together, right? Moose, meese, mice. Then I get my community, and that's going to be the moose and the bears and the bobcat and the owl, right? After my community, I go up to my ecosystem. So now I'm adding in my abiotic. So I'm going to say all of my stuff from above plus my river and how humid it is and the mountains in the background. Okay. After ecosystem, I go up to biome. So this is all the places across the earth that have that same temperature and same like type of animal. So this would be like the deciduous forest biome. Then planet Earth, the biosphere. So now that we know the different parts of ecology and how we can talk about the vocab, we're going to talk about biodiversity, which is what we're looking at when we look at ecology. We actually study the biodiversity and how different things is. This is a measure of the variety of organisms that you find within an ecosystem. And there are 3 different ways we're going to measure this. And it's important because this is going to influence the ecosystem structure, stability, and function. So like how the ecosystem is structured and how well it can come back from disturbances is all dependent on its biodiversity. Right? When we look at biodiversity, we're going to look from broad to individual kind of, or species specific. All right, so the first one is ecosystem diversity. This is the variety of habitats and communities and processes that happen within an ecosystem. So some ecosystems have more diversity than others, like a mountain that has a lot of different caves and areas and trees and parts of the trees that animals can live is going to have more ecosystem diversity than maybe a desert that doesn't have many plants on it and many places to live. All right, so that's our first one, which is the biggest. And then we get the next level, which is species diversity. This is the number of different species that live in a set area. So if I look at like my classroom, how many different species live in my classroom, right? A lot. Or if I look at like the state forest in Billerica, how many different species? So like there are bears there are deer there are chipmunks and squirrels, and there's plants, not just plants, there's oak trees and pine trees and ivy, and there's like lady slippers, and there's mushrooms, right? That's all species diversity. Right, so ecosystem big, then species, and then we go even smaller. We're looking at our genetic diversity. This is the number of the different forms of a gene in a species. So now I'm looking at just like the deer population in the state forest. If I take test all their like DNA, how many differences are there in the DNA? Are they all the same color brown, or is there variations? Like we're looking at the variations in the DNA and how that's going to matter. Okay, so those are our 3 types of biodiversity. Next, more definitions. These you know. I think all of the next few you know. So first one is types of organisms in an ecosystem. We have producers and consumers. Producers, autotrophs, right? Automatic. They do it themselves. They don't need somebody else. Any of that works. So autotrophs, these are organisms that are going to use photosynthesis to take sunlight and make carbohydrates. Glucose, don't forget. These guys are going to be green. So we're looking at green plants, green algae, bacteria that have green in them. All right, the green is going to be the chlorophyll. That's what's going to help us with the photosynthesis so that they can make sugar so everybody else can eat them. So those are our producers. Then we have our consumers. These are heterotrophs that have to eat to get energy. This is animals, fungi. So mushrooms are not autotrophs. They're not green. Mushrooms are white, right? They absorb things. So mushrooms are consumers, protists and bacteria. Producers are green. So types of consumers. We take that consumer, all right, fine, you eat things, but there's like 1,000 different ones of you, so we're going to make it more specific. We have herbivores who eat plants, right? Let's remember herbs, plants, easy. Herbivores eat plants. We have carnivores. I would say carn meat, but that doesn't make sense to me. So carnivores eat meat, so they're going to eat animals. And then we have omnivores like us. We eat plants and animals, right? Because carnivores are going to eat strictly animals. Lastly, decomposers. These are going to consume plant and animal remains. Right, so what they do, decomposers are going to break down, they're going to secrete enzymes, right? They're going to break down the body of organisms that are dead and break it into the actual organic molecules, and usually just poop them back into the ground or secrete them back into the ground so that the plants then can absorb it again and use it again to make more, right? Because matter is going to cycle. It doesn't just get used up. So ecological relationships, I think this might be our last part of the ecosystems, general basic stuff. These are relationships about organisms that live in your ecosystem. So first one you got is competition. This is when 2 or more organisms need the same limited resource. It could be like our pitcher, which this is not the competition usually. think of. I know it's not, right? In this picture, we have two plants competing for sun, right? Which they do. Bigger plants shade out the smaller plants so they can't make food. That's the same thing as like a wolf stealing the food from the coyote, and the wolves are going to live, not the coyote, right? That's what plants do. So competition is our first one. Then we have predation. Now predation, competition isn't predation, because competition, you don't eat the other one. Predation, you have to eat the other organism. You can't just kill it, okay? So predation is when one organism, the predator, captures and eats the prey. It doesn't just kill it because it's scared of it, it eats it, okay? And then symbiosis, which is when two organisms live together in a really close relationship. On the next page, we'll talk about the different relationships, but I'm pretty sure you did those in middle school. First relationship, parasitism. This is when one's harmed and one benefits. What I want you to do is make sure you know parasitism has a plus and a minus. I got one helped, one harmed. Dogs and fleas. Mutualism. Mutual. In a mutualistic relationship, we are all happy. This is both benefits. So hummingbirds and flowers. Hummingbirds get food, flowers get pollinated, right? Those little birds that eat the ticks off of the rhinoceros's back, right? They get food, the rhinos get clean. Okay, it's a good one. And then our last one is commensalism. This is 1 plus and 1 with a 0. So this is just how to remember them. So one's helped, one's neutral. Like a bird can have a nest in a tree, but it doesn't like hurt the tree, it doesn't help the tree, it's just like there. Makes sense? There are some of those little birds that ride on like the big African animals, that when the animal walks, it kind of stirs up bugs, and then the bird eats the bugs. That doesn't really help the animal because he's just walking through the bugs because he doesn't care about the bugs. So that one would be commensalism. All right, so it makes sense. Parasitism, mutualism, commensalism. Plus minus, plus plus, plus 0. See you in class.